Hey there. Tonight, we're stepping back into a time when the streets reeked of smoke, rot, and despair. Doors were marked with crosses, bodies were burned in haste, and moving silently through the chaos was a strange figure draped in a long black robe, gloved hands steady, and a bird-like mask filled with fragrant herbs. A man hired to heal, yet feared as an omen. So, before you get too comfortable, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel, but only if this kind of story helps you wind down at night. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from, and what time is it where you are? There's something strangely comforting about knowing we're not alone, quietly drifting through the shadows of history together. Now, dim the lights. Pull your blanket up to your chin. Breathe in the soft, familiar scent of your fabric softener. Let the ticking clock be your carriage through time, because you're about to take your place among the silent watchers of the plague years. You've arrived in Messina, Sicily, in the year 1347. The sea is bright, the markets are loud, and something smells like fish and regret. You're a dock worker, half asleep on your barrel, swatting flies and dreaming of fresh bread, which hasn't happened since your cousin Enzo burned the bakery down trying to cook with wine. It's a normal day. People shout in Sicilian, chickens argue in the streets. Someone's playing a lute very badly. You think maybe, just maybe, this is the most peace your back has had all week. And then, you see the ship. It limps into the harbor like a ghost dragged from the underworld. The sails hang like torn shrouds, and the hull groans like it's haunted. It's a Genoese merchant vessel, but no one's yelling greetings. No crew leaning over the edge. No drunken singing. No colorful flags flapping in the breeze. Just silence and the ominous creak of wood. Naturally, because you're human and haven't invented horror films yet, you go closer. The dockmaster squints. They're not throwing ropes. You shrug. Maybe they're sleeping. He scowls. All of them? At once? And then you notice someone slumps over the railing, not leaning, slumping, like their spine forgot how to work. The city gathers. Because of course it does. What else are you going to do on a Tuesday in 1347? People crane their necks. Priests cross themselves. Children climb onto barrels to get a better look. And the ship? It just sits there, like a coffin on water. Finally, someone ropes it in. 3 brave fools in a rowboat row out, board the deck, and promptly wish they hadn't. What they find is death. Rows of corpses, some bloated, some blackened, all terrifyingly fresh. Rats scurry from under tunics. Crates of silk and spices are slick with something that shouldn't be on silk or spices. And the smell? Imagine if rot married despair and they had a very ugly baby. The port explodes in chaos. People run, scream, pray, vomit, or all 4 at once. The dead are dragged ashore because, well, someone has to move them. And this is 14th century logic, where touching a plague corpse is apparently not the worst idea on the table. But it's already too late. The thief has arrived, and it's not here for your gold. At first, it's just 1 or 2 people. A merchant who develops a fever and dies within 3 days. A fisherman whose neck swells up like a diseased pumpkin. A nun who starts coughing blood during vespers and keels over mid-hymn. People whisper, Malachio, the evil eye. Maybe someone angered the saints. Maybe it's punishment. Or maybe, just maybe, it came from that ship. But there's no time to debate theology. The sickness moves like gossip, fast, invasive, and utterly unstoppable. One day, your neighbor is selling figs. The next, he's a puddle of sweat and pus in his own bed. Whole families vanish in a week. Streets are silent, then full of wailing, then silent again. The symptoms? Oh, they're lovely. Fever like your brain is boiling in your skull. Pain behind the eyes, like someone is hammering your soul into jelly. Then the buboes, black, swollen lymph, nodes the size of apples erupting in your armpits, groin, and neck. They burst. They stink. They kill. If you're lucky, you die in 3 days. If you're unlucky, you last a week and take your entire household with you. And just to make sure it spreads faster, remember, no one in the 14th century knows what germs are. No one's washing their hands. Baths are suspicious. Physicians bleed you to balance your humors, which is code for drain your remaining strength. Priests tell you to confess. Flagellants whip themselves in the street. Someone blames the Jews. Someone else blames the stars. Everyone's blaming someone, but no one knows anything. All you know is that people are dying, quickly and messily. The graveyards fill up within days. The city stops ringing the bells because there aren't enough priests to toll them. Carts creak through the streets, loaded with the dead. "Bring out your dead," they shout. And you don't answer, because you're already lying on the floor with a fever and a blackened nose. Markets close. Ports shut down. Trade vanishes. The church is overwhelmed. The government is absent. And the doctors? Most of them are already dead or have wisely relocated to places where the plague hasn't knocked yet. Which, by this point, is basically nowhere. From Sicily, the sickness spreads like spilled wine across a tablecloth. Genoa, Marseille, Venice, the Mediterranean becomes a cauldron of rot. Every ship, every rat, every flea becomes a tiny harbinger of doom. People flee inland, but they bring the disease with them. Town to town, village to village, it gallops through Europe like it's on a divine schedule. Entire towns are wiped out before anyone knows what hit them. One day, you're laughing at a puppet show in the square. The next, your brother is vomiting blood onto the cobblestones, and no one wants to bury him. And the worst part? There's no warning. No trumpet blast and no red sky. Just a cough, a shiver, a little black bump, and then you're gone. The rich barricade themselves in their villas. The poor crowd together and die faster. Some turn to God, some turn to drink. Some dig pits and throw their friends inside. Society unravels like a cheap wool tunic. There are too many corpses and not enough people. There are too many rats and not enough cats. And through it all, the disease keeps spreading, as if it has a map of the continent and a grudge against every living thing on it. By the time the rest of Europe realizes what's coming, the fog has already swallowed the coasts. The thief is in your town, your street, your home. You didn't hear it arrive because it doesn't knock. It just comes in and takes. Now, you have been commissioned to save an entire city from a disease no one understands, using tools that barely qualify as medical and wearing an outfit that looks like something out of a bird-themed masquerade ball from hell. You were a scholar last week. You read dusty Latin scrolls by candlelight. You debated Aristotle. You composed verses about the soul. Today, you're standing in a smoky council chamber, and a man with a fur-lined robe, trembling hands, and eyes like broken windows has just shoved a sack of silver at your chest and muttered the words, "You'll do." You blink. Surely he means someone else. Someone with a degree in anatomy. Someone whose experience extends beyond lancing boils on overfed noblemen. But no, the real doctors fled 3 days ago, packed up their tonics, their pomanders, and their finely stitched boots, and vanished into the countryside the second the bells started tolling too often. One by one. Gone. That's how you became the plague doctor. Outside, the city is a symphony of despair. Bells ring for the dead so often, they sound more like a dirge than a call to prayer. Dogs roam free. The air smells like ash, sweat, and fear. You pass houses, boarded from the inside. Some have red crosses smeared on their doors. Some have silence that feels heavier than stone. The council gives you a suit, not a proper uniform. This thing looks like a fever dream stitched together by a blacksmith and a mad tailor. The robe is waxed leather, thick, black, stiff, and hot. It's meant to keep the bad air out, or maybe trap it in. No one's quite sure. The gloves are heavy, the boots are too big, and then there's the mask. It's shaped like a bird's beak, long, curved, and filled with a bouquet of herbs stuffed into the nose like a makeshift air freshener for the apocalypse. Rosemary, mint, lavender, maybe even a bit of camphor if someone was feeling generous. You're supposed to believe this will filter the miasma, that it'll protect you from the invisible death slipping through windows and beneath door cracks. You don't believe it. But you wear it anyway. Because in this city, hope now wears a beak. You take to the streets. Children cry when they see you. Grown men cross themselves. Some run, some kneel. They call you Dottore della Peste. You're a walking omen, a prophecy in boots, a symbol that the worst has arrived, and that someone, anyone, is still willing to walk into the fire. Your first house is on Rue des Cordeliers. The door is ajar, swinging slightly in the wind like it's beckoning you. Inside, it's quiet, too quiet. You find a woman in bed, barely breathing, her skin spotted like a rotten pear. Her son hovers near the door, eyes wide. He hasn't left her side in 2 days, not since the swellings appeared under her arms. He's 6. He doesn't know what you are. You kneel. Your leather gloves creak. You check her pulse. You try to speak gently, but the beak muffles your voice into a hollow croak. The child flinches. She dies within the hour. You scribble a note on a parchment smeared with ink and fever sweat. You light sulfur near her body. You tell the boy to drink boiled water, though God knows what good that will do. Then you move on. This is your life now. You are equal parts doctor, undertaker, and counselor. Some days you feel like a ghost. You walk the city's skeleton, collecting stories and bodies, leaving chalk marks and prayers in your wake. People don't ask about your past. No one cares that you once studied at Bologna, or that you used to write poems about the stars. Now, you're the one who came. That's all they need. That's all they have. And socially, plague doctors are an experiment in awkward gratitude. Some hail you as a hero. They offer bread, wine, sometimes even their daughters. Others spit at your feet. They say you bring death with you, that your mask is a curse, your presence a mark of doom. They say they were fine until you arrived. You don't correct them. You sleep in a separate house. The council gave it to you, a cramped stone chamber behind the chapel. No one visits. No one dares. Your meals are left at the door like offerings to a dangerous saint. Bread, mostly stale, some cheese. Once, a pie with a note that read, "For the doctor. May God spare you." You cried after that one. Quietly. Just once. The mask never leaves your side. At first, you only wore it during visits. But then the dream started. Faces, gasping. Boils, bursting. The sound of prayers dissolving into coughs. So now you always wear it. Even alone. It's your armor, symbol, and your burden. Word spreads beyond the city. Other towns begin commissioning their own plague doctors. Some copy your mask. Others invent new charms. Amber necklaces, perfumed gloves, mirrored rings to reflect death itself. Medicine becomes theater. A grim pantomime against the dark. You write letters to scholars describing symptoms, treatments, death rates. Some reply. Most don't. You begin compiling notes. You draw pustules in the margins. You measure the hours between fever and collapse. You try to make sense of it all. But you know, deep down, you're not curing anything. You're only delaying it. Still, every morning, you rise. You strap on your armor. You step into the chaos. Because even if you cannot save them all, you can bear witness. You can record. You can hold a hand. You can remind them that someone still walks among them without fleeing. Hope wears a beak, after all. And today, at least, hope showed up. You didn't go to medical school, because that doesn't exist yet. You haven't studied anatomy, unless you count seeing Brother Thomas fall off a ladder last year and poking his leg with a stick to see if it was broken. But qualifications are mostly a suggestion in the year 1348, especially now that all the actual doctors have fled the city screaming or are already dead. Lucky them. It starts innocently enough. You're a baker's apprentice, or a monk's brother, or just the guy who didn't duck fast enough when the village council shouted, "Who wants to help?" The bell has tolled 16 times this morning. That's not a good sign. Every toll marks another soul, whose body is now leaking from at least 3 unexpected places. The plague has arrived, and it brought extra drama. You're standing in the chapel when your brother, the monk, let's call him Brother Elric, pulls you aside with a warm smile and a tone that says, "You're about to regret being born." He speaks gently, like he's offering you soup, not social suicide. "God has chosen you," he whispers. You're not sure what God did, but you do know that whenever someone says, "God has chosen you," you're about to end up in a situation involving bleeding, fire, or large rodents. This time, it's all 3. You try to protest. "But I'm not a healer. I make candles." Elric claps you on the back, which is suspiciously supportive, and also a little too fast. "Exactly. You work with wax. You're not squeamish. You'll do fine." That's not logic, but a trap. The current plague doctor, a real physician from the university, lasted 5 days. He wore a robe, carried a fancy stick, and left behind a detailed note that read, "To whom it may concern, I resign. Burn this letter immediately." He's either dead or sipping wine in Florence under a fake name. Now, the village is desperate. The sick are piling up like spoiled turnips in the market, and you, with your soft hands and zero training, are the closest thing to a medical expert they have. Congratulations. You've gone from candlemaker to corpse counter in 48 hours. Your pay? Absolutely nothing. No gold, no silver, not even a good chicken. You're told it's an honor, which is medieval code for, you're doing this, or we throw you out with the infected pigs. At first, you think, maybe it won't be that bad. How hard can it be? Day 1, you walk into your first house, and the smell hits you like a charging ox. It's rot, fever sweat, and fear all blended into a nose-stabbing cocktail. There's no mask, yet. Just a thin cloth someone dipped in vinegar and tied around your face like a sickly bandit. It does nothing. You gag and try not to make eye contact with the puddle of something that might have once been a person. You reach for the pulse. You realize you have no idea where the pulse is supposed to be. The wrist? The neck? The belly? You pretend to know, pat them like bread dough, and declare, yes, the humors are very imbalanced. This sounds smart. It is not. By day 3, you've learned 2 things. 1, people die very quickly. 2, you are now expected to diagnose, prescribe, and bury the bodies, sometimes all in one visit. There's no break, no sleep, no clean water. Your tools are a wooden stick, a bottle of spoiled wine, and advice from a shepherd who once saw a cow survive the sniffles. People ask if you can lance buboes. You don't know what that means. You nod and try not to faint. By day 7, your own clothes are stiff with sweat and blood and something else you refuse to name. A child vomits on your shoes. You apologize to her. Your new daily routine includes screaming internally, pretending to know Latin, drawing crosses on doors with chalk, and praying that's enough to keep the plague from oozing into your soul. The town council finally rewards you with a bucket of cabbage and a mildly appreciative head nod. One guy offers his niece's hand in marriage. You decline. She's also coughing. Brother Elric stops by every now and then, handing you more vinegar rags and saying things like, "You're doing God's work." You want to throw a cabbage at him. You don't, mostly because you're saving it for soup. By week 2, you start talking to yourself, loudly, in public. No one minds. They assume it's part of the healing process. You've buried 17 people. 4 were still warm when you dragged them out. There's no time to mourn. You sprinkle some herbs on the body, say a prayer, and hope heaven is less damp than this world. You think about quitting, running, faking your own death, but then you remember the council's rule. If you flee, they assume you're infected and burn your house down, with you in it. So you stay, because someone has to. Because even in a world drowning in pestilence, people still need to believe someone gives a damn. That someone will show up with a crooked stick and some vinegar and at least pretend they know what they're doing. You stay because Brother Elric keeps looking at you with those hopeful eyes, like you're the hinge on which the village's survival swings. Or maybe he just knows, if you die, he's next. At night, you sit by the fire, soaking your feet and wondering what you did in a past life to deserve this. Probably kicked a bishop. That sounds about right. Still, you patch your robe, you sharpen your stick, you rinse your rag, and you return to the alleys, the huts, the rooms where whispers die and bodies bloat. Because someone has to, and in this God-forsaken century, that someone is you. The city now smells like fear, filth, and 50,000 rotting regrets. But you, oh brave soul, have a plan. A bold, beaky, bizarre plan. You step out into the cobblestone chaos wearing what looks like the result of a failed bird cosplay and a hardware store accident. Why? Because you just built your own medical mask out of a butcher's funnel, some waxed leather, and a handful of suspiciously crunchy herbs. The world may be crumbling into pestilence and panic, but at least you look like an avant-garde goose. Here's the logic. The air is bad. The plague is in the air. And air, as everyone in your century agrees, is basically haunted. So, if you can filter the air, you can cheat death. Maybe. Probably. Hopefully. It starts off simple. A funnel from the butcher. Because why not trust something that's usually filled with pig blood? You attach it to a leather face covering using boiled glue, prayer, and blind optimism. Then you pack the long snout with protective herbs. You don't have a strict recipe, so you improvise. Dried lavender, thyme, crushed cloves, camphor, vinegar-soaked sponges, and one mystery leaf that smells like burned feet, but came highly recommended by the drunk monk down the street. The result? You look like a nightmare pelican in mourning, but you feel invincible, or at least marginally less doomed than the guy who thinks pigeons are a treatment. You take your first breath through the beak and immediately choke on your own herbal blend. It tastes like licorice dyed inside a chimney. But hey, if your mouth tastes like death, maybe death won't want you. That's medical logic in your century. No one really knows when the beaked mask started. Some say it was 1619 in Paris by a guy named Charles Delorme, a royal physician who thought he was clever. Others say it was just a theatrical gimmick that got mistaken for actual history. The truth? Like everything in plague times, it's murky, confusing, and probably at least 30% wrong. But you don't care. You're in full plague bird mode now. Let the historians argue later. You've got bodies to examine. Out on the street, children scream when they see you. Adults cross themselves. One elderly woman throws a cabbage. You duck, barely, and nearly topple over because the beak throws off your center of gravity. Turns out, designing a mask based on absolutely zero aerodynamic principles has consequences. But you're undeterred. You strut past with the grace of a cursed flamingo, determined to treat patients, or at least not inhale them. Inside homes, the smell of sickness hits you like a cathedral full of rotten onions. Bodies lie curled on straw mats, eyes wide, mouths open. Black buboes blossoming on their skin like some demonic garden. You can't help them. No one can. But you lean close anyway, pretending your presence matters. You hold your breath. Not because you're scared, okay, you are, but because the herbs inside your mask are starting to smell like damp socks dipped in soup. Your voice is muffled through the mask, and when you ask questions, the patients look at you like you're a messenger from the underworld. One man confesses to stealing a sausage in 1608. You nod solemnly, make a note on your wax tablet, and tell him he's forgiven. You don't know if that's allowed, but the poor guy's dying, and it seems rude not to. After rounds, you sit by the river, peel off the mask, and immediately gag. The herbs have turned into a wet compost pile of failure. You toss them into the water and watch a fish float to the surface. Maybe you overdid the camphor. Again. And yet, despite the sweating, the stink, and the overwhelming lack of actual science, the mask starts to catch on. Not because it works, it absolutely doesn't, but because it looks like it should. It's intimidating, mysterious, a walking symbol of doom with a hint of floral afterthought. Eventually, artists start painting it. Writers romanticize it. Costume designers go nuts. Centuries later, it becomes an icon of history, misunderstood and misremembered. People think it was everywhere during the Black Death. Spoiler, it wasn't. Most folks during the 14th century plague had never even seen such a mask. It wasn't common until much later, but historical accuracy is boring. The plague doctor mask is dramatic, spooky, and sells well during Halloween. So here we are. In reality, the mask didn't save you. It didn't filter the plague. It didn't protect your lungs. It just made you look slightly more credible as you shuffled through the streets of despair. But hey, that's half of medicine back then. Confidence, incense, and a very long stick for poking things from a safe distance. Back in your hut, you hang up the beak on a wooden peg. It smells like mildew and crushed thyme. You consider making another, maybe a shorter beak next time, or one with better ventilation, or maybe just no beak at all. But deep down, you know the mask isn't really for you. It's for everyone else. A symbol, a warning, a performance. You are the bird-faced sentinel of pestilence, and though the herbs rot, and the leather cracks, and the funnel rusts, you wear it again tomorrow. You're officially a medical professional in one of the most terrifying times in human history. The bad news: your new uniform is a medieval sauna suit crafted by someone who clearly hated you and had never heard of air circulation. It's summer. Not just any summer. Plague summer. The kind where the sun beats down like it's trying to kill whatever the Black Death missed. You step out of your one-room cottage already sweating because you slept in the same outfit you'll wear to work. Why? Because putting it on requires time, strength, and probably a support group. First comes the linen undershirt. It's scratchy. It's stiff. It smells faintly of old onions and fear. Then the trousers. Not tailored, just tubes of cloth that bind your legs like you're being prepped for medieval sausage making. Over that, you shimmy into the pièce de résistance, the oiled leather tunic. Oiled to make it waterproof, which also means airproof, which also means you're about to slow roast like a forgotten turkey in a peasant's bread oven. The tunic covers everything, from neck to knees. It's heavy, unbending, and glistening like a freshly waxed pig. Once it's on, you can't move your arms higher than your chest. Need to scratch your head? Too bad. The uniform doesn't allow for unnecessary luxuries like comfort or range of motion. You're not a man. You're a walking leather wall. Then comes the outer robe, another layer of leather. Because apparently, one isn't enough. This one is heavier, thicker, and somehow even hotter. The sun laughs at you from above as the sweat pools under your tunic, tickling down your back in greasy rivers. You haven't even put on the gloves yet, which are made of leather. Oiled, of course. Slipping them on is like plunging your hands into two damp, waxy fish. You can't feel anything, which would be fine if your job wasn't poking at plague sores and pretending not to gag. And now, the famous beaked mask. You'd think it might add some dignity. Nope. It's a claustrophobic nightmare. The beak, designed to hold sweet-smelling herbs to ward off bad air, juts out absurdly like you're a depressed stork. You can't see anything except two tiny glass eye holes, fogged up with your own desperate breathing. And what are you breathing exactly? Not fresh air. That's been filtered through cloves, lavender, and despair. The herbs are meant to keep the miasma out, the bad air that's supposedly spreading the plague. But what they really do is trap the smell of your own panic inside your bird-faced prison. It's like living in a hot, rotting bouquet made by Satan's florist. Now imagine trudging down a filthy medieval alleyway in this getup. It's 90 degrees. At least it felt like one. The sun is blinding. The streets are lined with open gutters and bloated corpses. Children cry. Adults cry. You cry. But it's hard to tell because your tears get absorbed by the linen lining of your mask before they can make it to daylight. Your boots, also leather obviously, are slick with a layer of sweat, filth, and possibly something you stepped in that was once alive. They squeak with every step, a wet, miserable chorus to your suffering. With each movement you feel the sweat trapped in your tunic slosh against your skin. You're slowly becoming a human stew. By mid-morning, your legs are weak. Not from fear, though there's plenty of that, but from dehydration. You've lost more fluids than a medieval ale barrel during festival week. You feel dizzy. The sun is high. The smell of death is everywhere, mixing with the stink of your boiling leather outfit to create a pungent cocktail that could drop a horse. You're in the middle of your third patient visit, a wheezing butcher with buboes the size of turnips, when the dizziness hits full force. The walls spin. Your knees buckle. You reach for the side of a plague cart and collapse into the arms of a stunned apprentice who wasn't trained for this. You've passed out. When you wake up, someone's removed your beak mask. Bad idea. The air hits you like a punch from a compost demon. You're lying on your back in the street, half in a puddle, half on a rat. A group of peasants is standing over you, poking at your bird mask like it might come alive. Your assistant fans your face with a scrap of parchment while mumbling a prayer and possibly questioning their career choices. You manage to croak out a single question. Water? But of course, there's no clean water nearby. Just rain barrels filled with mosquito larvae and the occasional drowned pigeon. Eventually, you stagger back to your feet. Your knees creak like a shipwreck. Every step is a sticky reminder that your undergarments have fused with your body. You consider taking off the tunic to cool down, but then remember the last doctor who exposed his bare arms. He's currently decomposing in the churchyard, so you carry on, leather-clad, boiling, broken, fearful. Every breath is a gamble. Every patient might be your last. You are, in every possible way, stewing in the costume of death. But at least you look terrifying. That's the point, right? The outfit is meant to ward off the plague, terrify the sick into cooperation, and keep the stench of death at bay. Too bad it doesn't actually work. The Black Death doesn't care about oiled leather or herbal beaks. It slips through cracks, latches onto fleas, and rides rats like tiny chariots of doom. And so you limp onward, mask fogged, vision blurry, armpits drowning. Your only hope is to finish your rounds before the uniform finishes you. Right now, you're hoarding dried rose petals like they're gold coins. You've got them in jars, sachets, and stuffed in every fold of your robes. Your house smells like a romance novel exploded in it. Rose, lavender, camphor, cloves, vinegar. Anything with a vaguely pleasant smell is now considered medicine. You believe, with unshakable conviction, that nice smells can protect you from dying like the rest of the filthy masses. This is the science of the 14th century. You wake up in your tiny stone house, your nose already overwhelmed. You've hung bundles of herbs from every wooden beam. Sage dangles above your bed like a fragrant spider. The floor is littered with petals, not from carelessness, but from sheer volume. You've lined the walls with dried marigolds and rubbed your sleeves with sweet-smelling oils until your skin is slick and glistening like a roasted chicken. Why? Because you are at war with miasma. Miasma is the invisible killer everyone fears. Bad air, poisonous vapors, the death breath of the plague itself. Nobody knows about bacteria or viruses yet, but they do know that corpses smell terrible, and that being near one often ends with another corpse. The connection is flawed, but understandable. If you smell death and then you die, clearly the stink did it. So you, brave physician that you are, prepare for your day like a knight suiting up for battle. But instead of armor, you reach for your pomander, a little metal orb filled with crushed rose petals and spices. It dangles from your neck, swaying gently as you walk, constantly perfuming the air around you. You hold it to your nose like a hostage negotiation is happening between you and the air. Outdoors, the stench is biblical. People are burning everything they can find to try to cleanse the air. Sulfur, tar, bundles of pine. The smoke just mixes with the stink of death and rotting animals and creates something wholly new, a foul perfume only the apocalypse could bottle. You try not to breathe too deeply. Walking to a patient's home, you pass others on the street doing the same thing. People holding sprigs of rosemary to their nostrils, children clutching oranges spiked with cloves, merchants wearing masks stuffed with sponge soaked in rosewater. You pass a man with a nosegay stuffed directly into his nostril like an organic plug. He nods at you. You nod back. There's honor among the scented. At your patient's house, the scene is familiar and horrifying. A mother lies wailing beside her child. The child is flushed, delirious, and surrounded by the overwhelming smell of despair and cheap incense. You glance at the door, where someone's tried to purify the entrance with garlic and bundles of thyme. You whisper a prayer, not because you think it'll work, but because it helps you breathe slower. Less air in means less miasma. Before you approach the patient, you do what any responsible 14th century doctor would do. You light a pan of aromatic herbs and wave the smoke around like you're summoning something. You're not trying to help the sick. You're trying to not become the sick. You cover your nose and mouth with a linen cloth soaked in rose oil and vinegar. The vinegar burns. The rose just barely cuts through. You bend over the child and immediately regret it. The smell of infection punches you in the face. Your body reacts. You take a step back and reach for your pouch. More petals. You stuff them under your nose and try again. You're not curing anything. You're surviving. You stay only as long as needed. No one expects a miracle. They just want to believe that the presence of your good smells might convince death to pass them over. You leave behind a handful of dried lavender and a small dish of vinegar, as if this will somehow rewrite their fate. You don't say goodbye. Just a nod and a mumbled, "God willing." Back at home, You boil your clothes in wine vinegar and rub yourself down with camphor until you smell like a minty pickle. You hang more herbs, burn more incense, and crush petals into a paste you smear on your chest like fragrant armor. You've lost 3 colleagues already this week. One dropped dead mid-visit. The second fell ill while cleaning his masks. The third insisted miasma entered through the ears and spent his final days stuffing them with marjoram and wax. None of it helped. Still, you persist. You're a doctor in the 14th century. You don't cure, you endure. Every new scent is a prayer. Every petal is a shield. Every breath is a gamble. And in the growing pile of your personal herbal fortress, roses, rosemary, rue, you cling to one simple, desperate hope that the sweet will hold back the rot. You don't know it yet, but your rose petals won't save you. The air is not your enemy. The rats are. You've survived another night in the 14th century Europe. Unfortunately, your neighbor's child has not. The coughing started yesterday. Today, her neck is swollen, hot, and bruised with a black lump the size of a hen's egg. A bubo. You don't know the term yet, but you will. Everyone will. Her mother is crying, kneeling in straw and mud, begging the local healer not to cut. The man standing above her wears a patched robe and carries a rusted blade. He insists he has to open the swelling. Let it bleed, he says. Let the sickness drain out. That's how you save a child from the pestilence. The girl doesn't stir. Her skin is pale. Her lips are cracked. She's 7 years old. The blade goes in. There's no anesthesia, no antiseptic, no clean cloths. Just a knife and someone hoping they remembered what to do next. The lump bursts. The smell is immediate and sour. The mother screams. The man says this is good. The poison is leaving her body. She dies before nightfall. This is medieval medicine. Not a science, not even a guess. It's desperation with a knife. If you're lucky, you get a surgeon. If you're less lucky, it's a barber who also pulls teeth and sets bones between shaves. If you're poor, it's the village herb woman who's seen 5 children die just this month. Illness in this world is never quiet. The sick moan through the walls of timber homes. People die in daylight, on carts, in fields. The air smells like rot and sweat, and no one knows what causes it. So they treat what they can see. And if they can't see it, they cut until they do. Lancing wasn't rare. It was the default. See a lump? Cut it. See a sore? Burn it. Someone bleeding from the nose? Stick herbs in the nostril and say a prayer. They don't understand infections. They don't understand the body. They see blood and assume the balance is off. Everything comes back to balance and to superstition. Sometimes they apply poultices made of onion, butter, and dead frog. Sometimes they mix crushed emeralds into wine and feed it to the patient. The ingredients vary. The results don't. You might think, surely the rich had better care. Not really. A lord with a fever might be offered mercury. If that fails, he's bled with a knife until he faints. His personal physician might own books, in Latin, full of guesswork, copied from older guesswork. But the outcome is the same. Pain, confusion, and a funeral. Churchmen warn that the sickness is divine punishment. So some doctors prescribe prayer. If that doesn't work, you may be flogged in the street. Physical pain, they say, might cleanse the soul and heal the body. When the plague comes, and it will, the treatments get worse. Some believe you must burst the swellings to save the patient. Others say, never touch them. Still others try to roast the lumps with hot irons. A few smear excrement into the wounds. Many patients die screaming. Most die silent. And if you survive, you're scarred. Literally. Your skin never quite recovers from being sliced open with a dull blade and packed with whatever herbs were available. The wound might fester. You might lose a limb. You might live with a limp or a twisted joint. Even childbirth is dangerous. Midwives don't wash their hands. No one thinks that matters. If you bleed too much, they say it's your body trying to purge evil. If the baby dies, they say it wasn't meant to live. If you die, they bury you fast and move on. Medicine doesn't comfort. It terrifies. There are no hospitals as you know them. In cities, there might be a monastery with a few beds. If you're allowed in, you lie beside the dying. One bowl, one blanket, one prayer. That's all. If someone shows up wearing a mask shaped like a bird, don't feel relieved. He's not here to help. He's here because the air smells like death, and he thinks the herbs stuffed in his beak will keep him safe. He might cut you, drain you, or set leeches on your chest. He might call it science. It won't feel like it. A sore throat could mean weeks of agony. A bad cut might mean gangrene. Toothache? They'll pull it with pliers and no warning. Dislocated shoulder? They'll snap it back by brute force. You learn quickly not to trust the treatments. The girl who died today isn't the first. She won't be the last. Every village has someone who treats the sick. Every village buries children. They say you must be strong. But strength won't stop the knife. It won't stop the bleeding. It won't stop the fever. The sickness wins. Again and again. You watch the mother wrap her daughter in a cloth that used to be part of her own wedding dress. She carries the body to the edge of the woods. There's no graveyard space left. She doesn't cry anymore. She just moves slowly, as if already half dead herself. Tomorrow, someone else will fall ill. Tomorrow, someone else will beg the healer to wait. Tomorrow, someone else will hear, "We have to open it." There's no mercy in the medicine. Only routine. And that routine is killing everyone. Now, you've got a fever, a real one, the kind that turns your skin clammy, your lips blue, and your neighbors suspicious. Welcome to medieval medicine, where the cure is almost certainly worse than the disease, and the diagnosis usually involves guessing, muttering in Latin, or consulting the stars. You could just stay in bed and pray. But that's what people do right before dying. And frankly, you're not ready to meet St. Peter quite yet. So instead, you call for help. Which brings us to the main event, a showdown between your town's two finest medical professionals. And by finest, we mean the two people who own the most knives and have the least hesitation about using them. Enter the barber surgeon, a man who cuts hair, pulls teeth, sets broken bones, and, most importantly, drains blood. He arrives with a cheerful swagger, sleeves rolled up, smelling of beer and boiled rags. His hands are stained with something reddish-brown that may or may not be rust. He is not a doctor, but don't tell him that. He's trained, sort of. His qualifications include watching someone else do it once and not immediately fainting. Now, enter his rival. The plague doctor, waddling in like a cursed penguin in his long black robe, gloves, and beaked mask stuffed with herbs. He looks terrifying, smells like a spice cabinet that's been on fire, and has the bedside manner of a haunted statue. His eyes glint behind glass lenses, and he mumbles about humors, vapors, and imbalance while tapping your forehead with a stick. He insists on diagnosing you with excess bile or miasma, which could mean anything from indigestion to imminent death. They don't like each other at all. The barber surgeon scoffs at the plague doctor's fancy Latin and calls him a mask-wearing buzzard. The plague doctor sniffs, literally and figuratively, and mutters something about quacks with razors. You're in the middle, sweating through your tunic, trying not to die while they argue over which part of you to cut open first. Finally, the barber surgeon wins the shouting match by sheer volume and grabs your arm. It's time for bloodletting, the reigning champion of medieval cures. Got a headache? Bleed. Fever? Bleed. Bad dreams? Definitely bleed. The theory is simple. Too much blood makes you sick. Therefore, less blood equals more health. Like fixing a leaky roof by removing more shingles. He ties a leather strap around your bicep, brandishes a blade that hasn't been cleaned since the last 4 patients, and slices. Blood spurts out into a shallow bowl, and he nods like a proud chef admiring a fine soup. You feel lightheaded. This is normal, he assures you. In fact, if you don't feel like collapsing, he hasn't taken enough. But wait, there's more. The plague doctor steps forward and demands the honor of finishing your treatment with leeches. Yes, leeches. Slimy, wriggling little vampires with teeth. He pulls them from a jar like gummy candies from hell and slaps them onto your skin. They latch on immediately because they're hungry and you're conveniently full of blood. The doctor hums to himself as they feed. You, meanwhile, are rapidly turning into a human wineskin with fewer rights. The leeches suck, literally and figuratively. They leave ring-shaped wounds and a newfound sense of regret. But the doctor beams. This is progress. In his mind, if the leeches are feasting, it means they've found the bad blood. Because clearly, your veins are where your problems live. Now you're pale, dizzy, bleeding from at least 3 different places, and somehow colder than when this whole circus began. The barber surgeon slaps a rag on the wound. The plague doctor drops a lump of rosemary into your mouth and says, "It will help you rebalance the elements." You're not sure if that means stop vomiting or start hallucinating. Possibly both. Neither man agrees on what happens next. The barber surgeon wants to rub mustard on your feet and shove them into hot ashes. The plague doctor prefers a poultice of boiled onions and crushed pearls applied to the armpits. You suggest maybe just lying down for a minute, but they ignore you. They're now arguing over whether your tongue is too red or just passionately inflamed. You are, medically speaking, a battlefield. And the worst part? This is the best care available. Universities in Paris and Bologna have men in robes arguing about the 4 humors and dissecting pigs. But down here, in your flea-bitten village, medicine is mostly superstition in a lab coat. There are no antibiotics. No anesthesia, no germ theory, just a mix of guesses, herbs, and aggressive optimism. And let's not forget the religious angle. Some folks think your illness is divine punishment. Better confess every sin you've ever committed, including stealing that apple when you were 10, just in case. A local priest arrives to sprinkle holy water on your bed and mutter prayers while the plague doctor blows incense around like it's going to scare the fever away. You begin to wonder if death might be the more peaceful option, but you survive. Barely. You're left with scars, bite marks, and a newfound mistrust of anyone holding a knife or a jar of wriggling worms. You've been cured in the loosest possible sense. Your fever breaks, your energy returns, and everyone takes credit. The barber surgeon says it was the bloodletting. The plague doctor swears it was the leeches. The priest insists it was divine intervention. You know the truth. It was probably just time. The body, despite all odds, sometimes heals itself. And medieval medicine, for all its blood and beaks, mostly succeeds by staying out of the way. But don't celebrate too quickly. You've still got boils on your legs, a persistent cough, and a mysterious rash that may or may not be contagious. In this world, surviving one illness just means you're healthy enough to catch another. So lie back, sip your gritty ale, and try not to sneeze near the fire. Because if you get sick again, the barber surgeon is already sharpening his blades, and the leeches are surely still hungry. Today, you've been promoted. Not in the modern sense. No corner office, no handshake, no raise. No, you've been promoted by the city guard to chief physician of the doomed. The job perks? A house full of plague victims, a door nailed shut from the outside, and an extended stay in what now might as well be your tomb. Welcome to 14th century quarantine. It begins with a knock. Not a polite one. Not even a knock, really. A thunderous slam of fists, wood splinters cracking as 3 city guards arrive at your door wearing tattered tunics, holding torches, and looking like they've already seen too much this week. One of them coughs. Great. Already promising. You open the door halfway. Mistake. A sharp shove, and they're inside. By order of the magistrate, one growls, your home is now designated a plague ward. You blink. A what? You say, like the words might change if you question them fast enough. But they don't. Behind them, 2 men drag a wheelbarrow full of bodies, some groaning, some not. Your wife screams. Your apprentice turns pale and vanishes under the table. You just stand there, dumbly watching as strangers with pustules leaking like spoiled porridge are carried into your modest stone cottage and deposited right onto your straw rug. You remember that rug. You once bragged it was imported from Flanders. Now it's absorbing someone's fever sweat. Before you can protest, the guards back out. One drives a thick iron nail through your front door. The sound echoes like a bell toll, final and merciless. They hammer up a wooden plank across the door and paint a bright red X over the threshold. A few curious neighbors peek from behind shutters. You won't see them again. Not alive, anyway. You are sealed in, locked inside your own home with 6 people in various states of dying. One is muttering nonsense in Latin. Another is actively foaming. A child is shivering so hard, you think the floorboards might crack beneath her. The smell is already shifting. Sweet rot, wet cloth, the tang of blood, and and something underneath it all that you can't quite name but feels like despair. There's no hospital. You are the hospital. No nurses, no assistants, no backup. You were trained in humor and astrology, not managing a plague dormitory. Your tools? A brass urinal, some dried herbs, and a prayer you stopped believing in last Tuesday. There's a bowl of garlic on the table. You consider eating it just to avoid breathing. You make rounds. Patient 1, a merchant who still thinks he's at his stall, asking invisible customers if they want wool or salt. He tries to sell you his shoes. Patient 2, a woman with eyes glassy and fixed, a black rash creeping up her neck like ivy. She moans once and then stops. You don't check for a pulse. What's the point? It gets worse when the fevered start speaking to ghosts. They see dead relatives, black dogs, angels made of flame. One man starts screaming about rats under the floor. You wish he were hallucinating, but deep down, you know he's not. You hear the skittering, too. Your family huddles in the loft, faces pressed to the rafters, trying not to breathe. Your daughter cries silently. She's 9. Her doll is now a mask made of cloth and dried rosemary. Your wife holds her rosary so tightly her knuckles bleed. Night falls. The candle sputters. One of the patients dies. You try to move him, but his limbs are locked. You cover him with a blanket and pray the others don't notice. They do. Day 2. The air is thicker. You are sweating but freezing. A fly buzzes around your face constantly. You swat at it with the book of remedies but miss every time. You whisper curses in Latin and English and French. Nothing helps. You've run out of vinegar. The pot of leeches you kept on the shelf tipped over. Now you're not sure where they are. Probably on someone's leg. Or yours. The guards return on day 3. Not to check on you. Don't be absurd. But to nail up another warning sign. They won't look you in the eye. You hear them mumble something about better to let the disease burn itself out. By now, 2 more have died. One bled from the gums until he choked. The other just stopped breathing mid-sentence. You wrapped them in linens and dragged them to the far side of the room. The bodies are cool now. The others avoid them. You try to. But there's nowhere left to stand where death isn't touching your shadow. Your own cough starts on the evening of the 4th day. Dry at first, then deeper. Your wife notices. She doesn't say anything, but she pulls your daughter closer and won't let you come upstairs anymore. You sit by the hearth, surrounded by the sick, listening to the wind outside rattle the shutters. You dream of water, of soap, of clean sheets and silence. Instead, you wake to the sound of someone retching beside you. Food? Don't be ridiculous. You haven't eaten since the 1st day. There's a crust of bread that's mostly mold, and a turnip someone dropped under the table. You chew it slowly. It tastes like dirt and regret. On the 6th day, the house is silent. Too silent. 4 corpses. One is still breathing. Barely. You check her pulse. Faint. You whisper kind words you don't believe anymore and wet her lips with wine. That night, the guards return. They call through the wood. Anyone still alive in there? You laugh. A long, broken laugh that makes your ribs ache. You answer, define alive. They do not reply. By the 7th day, only you remain. Maybe. You haven't checked the loft. You're not sure you want to. The fever is inside you now. You sweat through your tunic, shivering like a leaf in winter wind. You sit by the door and stare at the red X, wondering what day the boards will come down, if they ever do. The city did not save you. It trapped you. With its rules, its signs, its hammers. You were not protected. You were buried alive in the name of containment. And still, you're the doctor. So you write down what happened in cramped, shaky script, hoping someone will find it, hoping someone will learn from this. But you know better. This is the 14th century, and in here, no one learns anything. When the plague hits your village like a hammer made of pus and terror, the local officials suddenly remember that you, dear doctor, exist. You are summoned, usually by someone holding a rag to their mouth, who gestures vaguely toward the epicenter of screaming, coughing, and death. You walk into homes where everyone is either dead, dying, or praying they're dreaming. You prod bodies with your stick, mutter Latin you barely remember from monk school, and hand out advice like drink vinegar or burn your bedsheets, knowing full well none of it works. But they don't expect miracles. They expect you to show up and not immediately keel over, which, in these times, is practically sainthood. But don't expect gratitude. That died with the baker's third son. You may have been promised silver coins by the town council in a panic meeting conducted with plenty of nervous sweating and zero follow-through. Yes, doctor, we'll pay you generously for each house call, they say, while avoiding eye contact and subtly edging toward the door. Fast forward a week, and the coin purse is as empty as the village well. Instead, you receive a loaf of bread so hard it doubles as a weapon, or a goose with a broken leg, or, in the most insulting twist yet, a coffin. Not even a filled one, just a spare. You'll need it soon anyway, they say helpfully. The humor is as dry as the bread. You tuck the coffin under one arm, the goose under the other, and wonder if you should have become a blacksmith instead. At least blacksmiths die with dignity and a hammer. Even when you are paid, it's rarely in a timely manner. Medieval payroll works on a system of vague promises and early funerals. By the time your payment is approved, half the village has either succumbed to the plague or fled into the woods, wearing garlic necklaces and blind panic. The remaining officials are too busy looting churches to cut you a check. So you wait. You wait outside a crumbling council hall, surrounded by the sounds of hacking coughs and rats, with more authority than you. Days pass, weeks. You ask again, politely at first, then not so politely. Then you stop asking because no one alive remembers hiring you in the first place. Who are you? The new magistrate says. You consider pointing to the 15 families you tried to save, but they're all buried now. Your resume is 6 feet under, and don't expect your social status to help. You might wear the beaked mask and the black robe, but to most people, you're just another grim omen. Ambulatory death on 2 legs. Children cry when they see you. Mothers cross themselves. Some villagers hurl vegetables. Sometimes even the ones they were about to pay you with. You'd think risking your life every day would buy you some respect. But no. Respect is reserved for knights and priests. You're the man who shows up when everyone else flees. You're the last face someone sees before their body swells, bursts, and is dumped in a plague pit. Not exactly a reputation builder. You try to stay professional. You make your rounds. You wave your cane, check buboes. scribble fake prescriptions, and keep tally of the dead with the same enthusiasm a drunk monk has for a fasting sermon. All while knowing you're probably next. Every cough in your direction is a loaded crossbow. Every corpse you roll over might be your last. But still, you go on. Because somewhere deep inside, past the fear and the exhaustion and the crippling lack of pay, there's a sliver of something. Duty, maybe? Or stupidity? It's hard to tell them apart these days. Meanwhile, the townspeople assume you must be making a fortune. He's a doctor, they whisper. Surely he's rich. Yes, rich in lice, trauma, and bread that smells suspiciously like moldy hay. You sleep in borrowed rooms next to the dying. You eat whatever hasn't turned green. And when the day ends, you return to your quarters, which is just another word for a shack with a view of the local burial ground. The smell never leaves. Neither does the sound of weeping. There are rumors of doctors in cities like Venice or Avignon getting actual wages, silver, gold, the occasional tax exemption. But you suspect these are fairy tales told to keep you from walking into the sea. You heard one story of a doctor who asked for payment in wine and was sent a barrel laced with rat poison. Another, who demanded upfront pay, was promptly arrested for disturbing the peace. And yet you carry on, because if you stop, no one else will take your place. Plague isn't picky. It comes for lords and lepers, mayors and manure collectors. But somehow, it always leaves you last, just long enough to witness every collapse, every failed cure, every unpaid visit. So yes, you're a plague doctor, respected by none, feared by many, paid by whoever isn't dead yet, and sometimes not even then. You work alone, you sleep poorly, and you wonder, as you trudge through streets slick with sorrow and human waste, if you'll ever be able to wash the smell of death off your hands. Probably not. But hey, at least you got a goose. But none of that really prepares you for your morning on the job. You're standing at the edge of a cordoned-off district, cordoned off. Being a generous phrase for roped shut with fraying hemp and guarded by two guys with clubs who are already drunk. Behind the makeshift barricade, the plague is running wild. Inside are the infected, the half-dead, the soon-to-be dead, and the desperate. And now, the desperate are making a run for it. A mob surges toward you, screaming, clawing, trying to tear down the ropes and flee the quarantine zone. Mothers dragging their children, young men wild-eyed with fear, old women coughing blood and prayers. You're not their savior. You're not their friend. You're the enforcer, the one who stands between them and freedom, no matter how diseased that freedom may be. This is where your stick comes in. No, not a wand, not a scepter. A cane, a long wooden rod, carved and often tipped with metal, and it's not for walking, it's for hitting. And hit you do. With one swing, you drive the stick into the chest of a man charging you, knocking him back into the crowd. Another swing swats away the outstretched hand of a woman trying to shove past. You jab, thrust, swat, like a shepherd beating back a stampede of infected sheep. This isn't medical care. It's crowd control with a side of blunt force trauma. And yet, the cane is not just a weapon. It's also your tool. You use it to lift clothing, check for buboes, prod corpses to see who's pretending to be dead. It happens more than you'd like. You never touch a patient directly. The stick is your boundary, your only protection, your social distancing device, centuries before the term exists. Symbolically, it's more than wood. It says, I am the doctor. I am the law here. I can heal you or condemn you. You might be covered in wax and sweat and the stench of rosemary and rot, but in the eyes of the public, you're something else entirely. A dark angel, a masked executioner, a figure of fear wrapped in cloth and creaking leather. You don't have medicines. You don't have hope. What you have is authority and a stick to back it up. And let's be honest, you need it. Because your patients aren't grateful. They don't thank you. They don't offer flowers or prayers. Most of them run from you. Some spit. Others throw things. They've seen what happens when the doctor arrives. More death, more quarantine, more doors nailed shut from the outside while the people inside scream for mercy. Still, you press forward, wading through a nightmare made real. You enter homes where entire families lie in stiff, grotesque poses, mouths open mid-scream. You mark the doors with chalk. You speak with city guards who haven't bathed in weeks and who would rather throw you into the pit than follow your orders. Your only constant companion is the cane, swinging at the ready like a soldier's sword. Sometimes the cane speaks for you before you ever open your mouth. A boy throws a stone at you from a rooftop. You raise your stick. He disappears. A man curses you as you approach his plague-ridden wife. You raise the stick. He stares at it, clenches his fists, but steps aside. You aren't just fighting disease. You're fighting chaos, fear, denial. You're the only line between crumbling civilization and absolute madness. And your weapon isn't compassion. It's the authority to strike. One morning, it might have been morning. But let's be honest. The sun hasn't shown its face in days through the soot-streaked sky. You're called to a shack on the edge of town. The kind of place even rats are trying to evacuate. The air smells like boiled cabbage, sweat, and a thick layer of something you refuse to name. Inside, you hear singing. A lullaby. Soft, cracked, almost tender. A woman's voice. You step into the room, and there she is. A mother. Rocking. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. The rhythm is mesmerizing, until your eyes adjust. She's cradling a baby. A very, very dead baby. The skin is blue-black, the lips sunken, the tiny limbs stiff like broken branches. The baby's been dead for at least 3 days. You know this. Your nose knows this. Every fly in the kingdom knows this. But the mother? She doesn't. Or maybe she does. And her brain just short-circuited somewhere between grief and madness. Her eyes are wide, not with fear, but with absence, like someone blew out the candle inside her and forgot to relight it. Her mouth keeps moving, whispering a nursery rhyme as if her words could warm cold flesh, as if denial could reverse rigor mortis. You say her name, but there was no response. You try again, louder, still nothing. Then she looks through you, like you're a ghost, and she's already passed into a different realm where no one can reach her. She says, "Shh, he's sleeping." And you feel something inside you curl up and die. You've seen people die before. You've seen them vomit blood, scream for mothers who were already buried, claw at their buboes until their skin peeled off like bark from a tree. But this is different. This is death that didn't stop at the body. It reached its fingers into the mind and twisted. Grief, frozen in a moment, looping like a broken song. You want to help, but what do you even say? There's no training for this in your medieval medical handbook. There's no salve for heartbreak, no poultice for delusion. So you sit, and for a moment, just a moment. You hum with her. Not because you believe it will help, but because you don't know what else to do. Later, you'll try to coax the baby from her arms. She'll scream. She'll bite. She'll fight like a wild animal, because that corpse is her last tether to a world where things made sense. Eventually, she'll collapse, and you'll gently wrap the child in a sheet that used to be white. You'll bury the baby in a pit outside town, alongside 20 other tiny bodies that morning alone. And then you'll go home, wash your hands, sit down, stare at the wall. You'll think about how grief rewrites reality. You'll think about how many mothers you've seen humming to the dead. You'll think about how this plague isn't just rotting flesh, it's devouring minds. And the next day, you'll do it again, even if no one's soul survives intact. What happens to a society where the dead outnumber the living, where children stop playing and just stare, where lullabies become funeral hymns sung over cradles of decay? You start to notice the little things, like how the children who are still alive no longer cry. They just sit, quiet, watching, not out of obedience, but from a kind of numb knowing that tears don't fix anything. They've watched siblings die, parents, friends. They've been shooed out of rooms, only to sneak back in and find a body that wasn't there 10 minutes before. They've seen too much, more than most soldiers. Some draw pictures in the dirt, others just rock, like their mothers. You pass one child in the street, barefoot, skin sallow, eyes like two dry wells. He holds a stick and pokes a rat. Not to play, just to check if it's dead. It is. He shrugs and walks on. You don't ask his name. You don't even want to know it. Naming makes things real. Real makes things grievable. And grief is a luxury now. No one has time to mourn when death is sprinting door to door, like a demon on fire. Even priests have stopped talking about salvation. Their sermons are shorter, hoarser, more like exhausted sighs than messages of hope. You saw one priest walk into a chapel and throw his Bible against the altar. Didn't even say a word. Just walked back out and never came back. You understand. Because there are days where all you want to do is scream into the sky. Where is God? Where is mercy? Why are children burying their parents? Why are mothers singing to corpses? Why does the plague take the baby and leave the broken shell of a woman behind? You'll ask yourself these questions over and over, and the only answer you'll get is silence. Except for the lullabies. They never stop. You hear them drifting through cracked windows, floating through the plague fog, wrapping around the village like smoke. Songs from a time when life made sense, when songs were meant to soothe, not lie. And maybe, in some small, impossible way, that's what they still are. One last attempt to pretend, for just one more moment, that the world hasn't ended. Because if you stop singing, then it's really over. And even madness feels better than that. You arrive in the village with a pickaxe slung over your shoulder and a shovel in your hand. The air is thick, not just with the scent of rotting flesh, but with despair so dense it seems to cling to your skin like a second layer. The sky above is dull, gray, and low, as if the heavens themselves are weighed down by the sheer volume of death below. Your first task is simple in theory. Dig a trench. But this isn't any ordinary trench. This is a mass grave, a yawning maw in the earth where 1,000 corpses will be stacked like firewood. The ground is hard, the soil sticky from unseasonal rains, and each shovelful seems to carry the burden of more than just dirt. It carries grief, fear, and the undeniable stench of decay. You kneel at the edge of the pit, eyeing the growing mound of bodies waiting to be buried. Some are familiar faces: the butcher who once sold you sausage, the baker's wife who used to smile when you passed, the little children who ran barefoot through the streets just days ago. Now their glassy eyes stare blankly from pale faces, and their limbs lie twisted in unnatural positions, the work of the plague's cruel hand. There's no time for sorrow. The village council has decreed that all must be buried quickly. There's no room in the churchyard, no time to mourn properly, no chance for prayers to be said over each soul. The plague does not wait for etiquette. You and the other helpers begin the grim procession, hauling bodies on crude wooden carts, some still partially clothed, some swarmed with flies and maggots. The sight is enough to turn the stomach of even the strongest. You wipe the sweat and grime from your brow, but the smell never leaves. It clings to your nostrils like a dark cloud, equal parts death and desperation. You don't dare take a deep breath. Instead, you work quickly, your muscles aching, your back screaming from the constant bending and lifting. Each body you place in the pit is like adding another brick to a wall of sorrow that seems to stretch to the sky. The villagers watch silently, some from behind shuttered windows, others from a distance, eyes wide with helplessness. The few who offer a prayer do so with trembling voices, their words swallowed by the groans of the dying that still echo faintly in the alleys. As you dig deeper, you find yourself wondering how the earth can hold so many bodies. The pit grows wider and longer, a dark scar in the field outside the village, as though the land itself is weeping. Sometimes, you catch a glimpse of maggots crawling over the bodies already buried, a cruel reminder that even in death, the suffering continues. Your hands grow numb from the cold and the grime, but there is no pause. The cart comes again, creaking under the weight of another dozen corpses. You and your small team brace yourselves and begin the process anew, unloading, stacking, covering, pressing the earth down to hold it all in. It's a cycle without end. In moments of brief respite, you steal a glance at the faces of your fellow diggers. Some have tears streaming down dirt-streaked cheeks. Others stare blankly ahead, their minds numbed against the horror around them. No one speaks about what they've seen. Words feel futile in the face of so much loss. You remember the doctor's tools at your side, useless against a plague no one understands. There are no medicines, no cures, just the hard labor of burying the dead and the grim hope that the living might survive another day. Sometimes, in the quiet hours, you whisper a prayer, though you're not sure if anyone or anything is listening. At night, the pit lies open, a dark wound in the earth. You cover it loosely with wooden planks and dirt, but the smell escapes in thick waves, drifting over the village like a living nightmare. Rats come to feast, their eyes glowing in the moonlight, adding another layer of terror to the scene. The village no longer feels like home. It feels like a mausoleum. You think of your own family far away and wonder how long before the plague reaches them. The thought tightens your chest like a vice. You try not to imagine the endless rows of bodies you'll have to bury tomorrow. There's no end in sight. This is the world you live in now, a place where death is not a visitor, but a permanent resident. Every grave you dig, every corpse you stack, every breath you take is a battle to hold on to your humanity when everything around you screams otherwise. As dawn breaks, you wipe the grime from your face, ready for another day in the trench of the forgotten. Because in the plague years, this is the cruel new normal. Mass graves overgrown with sorrow, the earth filled with the lost stories of lives snuffed out too soon, and a doctor's hands dirtied not by healing, but by the grim duty of burying the dead. What does it mean to live when death is all around you? How do you hold on to hope when the ground beneath your feet is filled with nameless bodies? And when the last shovelful of earth covers the pit, what becomes of the souls who rest beneath? You don't have answers. You only have the weight of the shovel in your hands and the cold, unyielding earth waiting to swallow the forgotten whole. You've just stumbled into a midnight in a plague-ravaged medieval town. The air is thick with a smell so foul it claws at your throat. A cocktail of rotting flesh, burning herbs, and the coppery tang of blood. It's not just the smell. It's the sound that punches through the dark. The bell tolls, not a gentle ring, but a slow, hammering clang that reverberates through every bone in your body. The church bell doesn't just call the living to prayer here. It summons death, delivering the news that another neighbor, another friend, has succumbed to the invisible terror stalking the streets. But no one answers the door anymore. The bell's echo bounces down deserted alleys where shadows cling like cobwebs. The streets are empty except for the carts. Heavy, creaking wooden carts piled with bodies. Sometimes the cart driver's face, smeared with sweat and exhaustion, flickers in the torchlight. Hollow eyes that have seen too much. They don't stop for anyone. They don't ask. They don't spare a glance. They simply roll forward, their wheels grinding over cracked stones, slick with the grime of death and despair. You want to scream, but the sound is swallowed up by a deeper silence, an eerie stillness that follows the bells and the carts, like the moment after a storm when everything holds its breath. But the silence is broken by distant screams, not the hopeful, pleading cries of survivors, but the final, raw agony of those abandoned to die. The plague doesn't knock. It breaks in like a thief and leaves the world gasping in its wake. Imagine standing on a street corner as the bell tolls 12 times. Each clang is a death knell. The townsfolk no longer come outside. No more whispered prayers at doorways. No cautious glances from shuttered windows. Fear has silenced the town. You can hear the rats instead. They're scratching. They're scurrying through the gutters clogged with refuse and uncollected bodies. The rats are the real rulers of the night now, feasting where humans have fled. They carry the plague with them, tiny paw prints on the bones of the dying. And the smell is relentless. It's not just the dead bodies left piled in corners or dragged through streets. It's the stench of sickness itself, the hot, sour breath of the fevered, the sickened coughs rattling like dry leaves in the wind. It's the coppery sweat of those running from death and the acrid smoke of houses burned to try to stop the spread. You clutch your nose, gag, but it lingers, a permanent assault on your senses. The plague doesn't just kill the body, it suffocates the soul. But amid this horror, amid the cacophony of bells and silence, there's a man sitting alone by candlelight. He's a doctor, though calling him that feels generous. His robes are stained with ink and sweat. Around him, scattered parchments litter the floor like fallen leaves, all scribbled with observations and fevered notes. He's finishing a treatise on the plague, a desperate attempt to make sense of the madness. By day, the streets are death's playground. By night, his small chamber is a battlefield between knowledge and despair. His quill scratches across the fragile parchment as the candle flickers and guttering shadows dance on the walls. Every word he writes feels heavy with the weight of failure, because no one reads his work. Nobles ignore his warnings. Townsfolk distrust his remedies, and his peers avoid him like the plague itself. He is the last witness trying to capture the chaos before it consumes everything, but his words fall into an abyss of indifference. The plague is unstoppable. His knowledge might as well be whispers lost in the wind. One night, in a rare moment of grim determination, he attempts to dissect a corpse, a plague victim brought in under cover of darkness. His gloves are thick and ill-fitting, his tools crude. As he cuts into the flesh, the stench hits him like a physical blow, a mix of decay and something stranger, something alive beneath the skin. The corpse's bloated form resists, and a sudden spasm, a macabre last breath, makes the doctor jump back, heart pounding. The dissection is a disaster, but also a revelation. This is no ordinary disease. It eats from the inside, a thief in the night stealing life from the blood and organs. Despite the horror, the doctor's notes grow more detailed, more desperate. He tries to map the disease, to find patterns in the chaos. But the plague is a puzzle missing pieces, a dark riddle no mind can yet solve. Anatomy is in its infancy, and every corpse a mystery wrapped in rot. The doctor's obsession deepens. Nights bleed into days as he chases fragments of knowledge, while the town outside descends further into madness. In the quiet moments, when exhaustion momentarily softens his resolve, he dreams of cures. Elixirs brewed from strange herbs, potions that could halt the fever's climb and stop the swell of buboes. He pores over dusty tomes, crosses tinctures, and mutters arcane formulas like a mad alchemist. But when dawn comes, the dreams sour. Rats gnaw at the walls, and a new bell tolls somewhere far off. There is no cure. There is only death, waiting. The doctor's last days are a blur of shadows and scribbles, of whispered prayers and the steady drip of fear. His manuscript, stained with tears and ink, remains unfinished, ignored by all but destined to become a silent testament to a world overwhelmed by plague and darkness. He burns his last candle, looks out over a town swallowed by death, and wonders if any future will learn from the horrors he tried to capture. This is a regular night in plague-ridden Europe, where bells toll, not just for the dead, but for the living who are slowly losing their will to fight, where the silence after screams is louder than any noise, and a lonely man's candle flickers bravely against the darkness that no amount of science can yet chase away. You've stepped into the dim flicker of a candlelit room in the year 1348, smack in the middle of the Black Death's merciless rampage across Europe. The air is thick, not just with smoke, but with a heavy, suffocating dread. You are not just witnessing history. You are trapped inside it, a powerless observer to the horrors few dared to put to paper, and even fewer dared to read. Meet Master Almeric, a learned man and one of the few brave enough to put quill to parchment as the plague tightened its grip on the continent. His tiny, cluttered chamber is lit only by the sputtering flame of a candle, struggling to hold back the encroaching darkness. Outside, the streets roar with the cries of the dying, the desperate, and the dead. Inside, Almeric's hand shakes, not just from the exhaustion of fever, but from the weight of knowledge he's racing to capture before death claims him too. For weeks, maybe months, he has labored over his manuscript, a treatise that aims to understand the invisible enemy tearing families apart. The words pile up on brittle parchment, symptoms, patterns, strange swellings called buboes, the uncanny speed of contagion. He documents what no one else dares admit aloud: the helplessness, the chaos, the terrible fact that all their prayers and charms seem useless. Yet, in a cruel twist of fate, while his work glows with desperate hope and rational inquiry, it is destined to gather dust, ignored by a world too frightened or too resigned to pay attention. Because who has time for science when death lurks at every door, when neighbors vanish overnight and entire villages are wiped off the map? Who wants to confront the brutal truth when superstition, fear, and rumor provide easier answers? The church condemns his questions, branding them heresy. The frightened masses prefer the comfort of blaming witches or angry saints, rather than accept that plague may simply be beyond human control. Almeric's treatise, a fragile beacon of reason, is overshadowed by the growing cacophony of panic and despair. And so the candle burns lower, his eyes grow dimmer. Each stroke of the quill is a fight against the inevitable, against the plague, against ignorance, against silence. The room smells of old parchment and beeswax, mingled with something far more ominous: the faint but unshakable stench of death carried in through the cracks of the wooden shutter. Outside, the world is falling apart, but inside this lonely study, a quiet battle for knowledge wages on, a battle that history will mostly forget. Because knowledge in the middle of the plague was a lonely pursuit. Now imagine a nearby village, where another sort of terror unfolds behind the stone walls of a crude makeshift anatomy chamber. The faint glow of torches reveals a grim scene: a half-draped body, pale and bloated, the unmistakable visage of someone claimed by the plague. It's the early days of anatomical science, a time when dissecting corpses is as much about fear and superstition as it is about curiosity. The doctor in charge, Master Reginald, is no stranger to the macabre, but even he is unsettled. His fingers tremble as he cuts through the waxy skin, uncovering swollen lymph nodes and blackened organs, evidence of the disease's deadly reach. But this is no orderly lecture. It is chaos disguised as study. A sudden spasm from the corpse makes the room jump. Whether it's rigor mortis or something darker, no one knows. The air turns cold and oppressive as rumors swirl that the dead aren't truly dead, or worse, that the disease can still leap from the corpse to the living in a sinister dance. The local priests shun the endeavor, calling it a desecration. The villagers whisper about curses and divine punishment. Yet, Reginald presses on, driven by a vision no one else shares: that understanding the body could one day unlock the secrets of the plague, that mapping the disease's pathway through flesh and bone might save lives. It is a grim, lonely science, pursued in secrecy and fear, often mocked and misunderstood. The needles of dissection poke not only at the body, but at the fragile hope of discovery itself. Each cut is a step into the unknown, where knowledge battles superstition and the inevitable presence of death. Meanwhile, in a cramped apothecary's room, thick with the scent of crushed herbs and dried roots, another figure wrestles with madness and hope. Dr. Thomas, obsessed with a potion that might stop the plague's deadly march. Day and night, he stirs strange concoctions, mixing mercury, crushed gemstones, and the odd feather of a blackbird. Anything he believes might hold power against the invisible killer. His notes are filled with wild theories and frantic scribbles, a desperate prayer disguised as science. He dreams of glory, imagining himself hailed as a savior, but the reality is far crueler. His potions cause more harm than good. Some patients die clutching a vial, others curse the bitter taste. Rats scurry around his feet, the plague's unwelcome heralds, mocking his efforts. His obsession isolates him. Friends avoid his door, neighbors whisper he's lost his mind. Yet he cannot stop. The plague's grip is tightening, and so is his desperation. Dr. Thomas's story is a painful glimpse into the human side of the epidemic, the futile grasping for control, the blurred line between hope and madness. His potions, like many of the era's cures, are little more than illusions, attempts to rewrite fate in the face of overwhelming death. And so, the candle burns low in another dimly lit room, not with knowledge but with obsession, a symbol of how, in plague-ridden Europe, science and madness were often indistinguishable, and the line between healing and harm razor thin. So what did these men, the chronicler, the dissector, the potion maker, witness in those grim years? Horrors beyond words, a world unrecognizable to us now, cities emptied of life, fields left to rot, families torn apart by unseen terror. But more than that, they witnessed the limits of human understanding, the crushing weight of ignorance, and the painful, lonely struggle to wrest meaning and survival from chaos. Their stories remind us that even in the darkest times, the flicker of inquiry, the yearning for truth, and the desperate hope for a cure never truly died. They fought against a shadow no one could see, in a world where survival was itself a fragile victory. And maybe, just maybe, that is the most haunting horror of all, the knowledge that sometimes even our best efforts are met with silence, and our greatest battles are fought in the quiet spaces no one sees. The last assistant didn't survive past lunch. You stand in the cold stone chamber of an unnamed monastic infirmary, turned makeshift theater of the dead, though no one's laughing. On the table before you lies what was once a human man, now a bloated mosaic of blackened boils and rotting flesh, the scent hitting you like a wagon load of spoiled onions and burnt hair. You can't breathe through your nose. You can't breathe through your mouth. So, you don't breathe at all. Welcome to the 14th century's most horrifying biology lesson. The body is stiff. Not the kind of rigor mortis stiff you read about in cheerful bedtime scrolls. This is stiff, as in, bend the arm, and it snaps like a bundle of dried parsley stiff. The surgeon, if you can call a man with a bone-handled cleaver and an interest in inner truths, a surgeon, begins the dissection. The blade sinks into the bloated abdomen, and instantly, the room is filled with a sound like a wineskin bursting in the sun. A thick spray erupts, black, rancid, chunky. You blink once, twice, but the droplets have already reached you. They're in your eye, in your mouth. You taste regret, decay, and possibly someone's pancreas. The other assistants step back. You don't. Not because you're brave, but because your feet are stuck. The floor is slick with something that was once inside someone else. And here's the worst part. It's warm. This is no noble academic inquiry. There are no crisp white coats, no scalpels glinting in clean light. There are dirty fingernails, trembling hands, and the gnawing fear that this corpse might not be as dead as it should be. Every incision is a gamble. Will this fluid leak or squirt? Will the stench knock you over, or merely haunt your dreams for the next 30 years? There's no guidebook, no charts, just rough drawings in some monastery's forbidden section and a few Latin phrases muttered like prayers over each opened cavity. The lead anatomist, Brother Joran, a former baker with a fascination for pustules, murmurs, "Observe the buboes." He gestures with a wooden spoon, because all the metal tools have rusted from blood and time. The buboes are black as night, clustered along the groin like hell's own grapes. When punctured, they ooze a sickly mixture of pus and blood, and yes, the odor is unholy. You're fairly certain a demon left this man's body through his armpit. Brother Joran believes that by mapping the plague's path through the body, salvation can be found. That in the guts of the doomed lie answers, God's breadcrumb trail out of damnation. But the only thing you find is confusion. The organs are wrong. The lungs feel spongy. The liver is mottled and huge. The heart shrunk to a shriveled fig. Nothing matches the diagrams. Nothing makes sense. You aren't uncovering truth. You're swimming in guesswork and grief. One of the monks begins to vomit in the corner, loudly and repeatedly. Another faints. His head hits the ground with a slap that echoes through the stone chamber. No one helps him. No one can. They're too busy watching the body twitch. Yes, twitch. A muscle fires near the jaw. The dead man's lip curls into what looks disturbingly like a smirk. You feel your bladder do something traitorous. Whispers pass through the group. Is it alive? Is the plague animating it? Is this sorcery? You know it's just a post-mortem spasm. Probably. Maybe. But in the year 1348, logic is something for Italian philosophers and madmen. Here, fear rules. And in this fear-drenched chamber, every creak is a curse, and every spasm is the devil winking. Outside, people are dying by the dozen. Inside, you're wrist deep in a stranger's abdomen, looking for clues and finding only more death. Joran tells you to remove the stomach. You hesitate. It's bloated like an overfed frog and pulsing ever so slightly. You press your hands against it. It bursts. You scream. Everyone screams. A mixture of partially digested roots, bile, and something yellow that might once have been an onion hits the ceiling in a spray, so forceful it knocks over a candlestick. The room plunges into smoky half-darkness, and someone starts praying in tongues. No one knows how the plague spreads, but you all suspect it's this moment, these fluids, this ungodly stench that now clings to your robes, your hair, your soul. You can't leave this place without carrying some part of the dead with you. You wash your hands in vinegar. You soak your face in rose water. It does nothing. The smell lives in your beard now. The memory lives in your marrow. Joran insists the sacrifice is worth it. To cure the living, we must open the dead, he chants like a mantra. But you're starting to doubt him. This isn't science. It's desecration in disguise. Holy men aren't supposed to eviscerate the fallen, and yet here you are, shoulder to shoulder with God-fearing scholars, carving into plague-stricken torsos like apprentices of Frankenstein long before he was even a nightmare. The body on the slab begins to slide. The table is warped from rot and weight. One leg collapses. The cadaver rolls onto the floor with a wet slap. Someone sobs. You whisper apologies to the corpse, though you know he can't hear you. Or maybe he can. Maybe part of him is still trapped, watching, screaming. You hope not. You desperately hope not. Outside, the bells toll again. Another death, another opportunity. Joran turns to you, eyes gleaming with feverish conviction. We begin again, he says, as if the previous dissection hadn't ended in physical and spiritual ruin. A new body is dragged in. You recognize the face. He was a farmer. He gave you carrots once. Now you'll be cutting into him to learn how he died, as if understanding his final moments will undo them. You think of the rumors that in Bologna, some physician boiled corpses and sketched the bones. That in Paris, anatomists wore beak masks and sniffed herbs to survive the stench. That in Avignon, doctors opened so many cadavers they no longer dreamed of living things, only of organs, leaking in purple, speaking in their own grotesque language. You no longer feel your hands. You no longer feel much of anything, just cold and dread, and the nagging suspicion that this gory chaos isn't leading to a cure, just more horror. But you press forward, because maybe, just maybe, one more incision will reveal the secret. One more organ will whisper its truth. Or maybe you'll just add another name to the long, stinking list of those who died trying. Welcome to the beginning of anatomy. A glorious, gut-soaked horror show. And your front row. You've convinced yourself, and more worryingly, your village, that you're on the brink of a breakthrough. A miracle potion, brewed in a cauldron that used to be your wife's laundry basin. You call it Vita Cordis, life of the heart. Sounds promising, right? It's made of crushed rosemary, old honey, burnt orange peels, vinegar, and powdered unicorn horn, which, let's be honest, is probably just ground up deer bones you bought from a guy named Falk, who also sells miracle teeth that cure sadness. You live in a small stone hut near the edge of town, with a hole in the roof to let the plague vapors escape. Because you're a scientist, obviously. Your table is cluttered with vials, moldy herbs, wax seals, and so many rats that you've stopped naming them. You used to chase them out. Now they're roommates. You just pray they don't drink the Vita Cordis. It's valuable and toxic and probably flammable. You've already lost one eyebrow to an experiment involving chicken blood and a misplaced candle. At night, you don't sleep. Not really. You lie awake, staring at the beams above your bed, listening to the chittering of 1,000 tiny claws in the walls. You dream in feverish colors, visions of golden bottles, of crowds cheering your name, of kings kneeling for your cure. You see yourself walking through the town square, not in rags, but in robes of silver, holding aloft a vial that glows with holy light. In the dream, people weep and kiss your feet. In reality, someone just tried to stone you yesterday because their aunt drank your last potion and immediately exploded into pustules. By dawn, you're on your feet again. Not because you're ready, but because you can hear the death cart creaking down the street. You open your door, Mist clings low to the ground like a ghost that refuses to leave. The bell rings. One clang for each soul lost in the night. 13 today. 13 yesterday. You've stopped keeping count. A woman approaches you, cradling a bundle. Her eyes are sunken, her face streaked with soot and snot and tears that never dry. She says nothing, just holds the bundle out. It's her child, swollen lumps under the arms, blackened toes, breath so shallow it barely moves the rags. She begs you with her eyes. You reach for your bottle, the new batch, stronger, more vinegar this time. You whisper something about rosemary and divine intervention, and say a Latin phrase you made up. She doesn't understand you anyway. You tip the liquid into the child's mouth. It gurgles, coughs, then goes still. You hand the bottle to the mother like it was a gift, not a failure. She nods, doesn't say thank you, just walks away. Back inside, the rats are waiting. One is sitting on your ledger. You've started recording your dreams in it. Last night, you saw a sea of dead rats turning into angels. The night before, the moon wept blood and told you to burn the village well. You don't tell anyone these things. Not yet. But you write them down, and you begin to believe. Maybe your potion isn't just medicine. Maybe it's prophecy. Desperation does strange things to people. You once scoffed at bloodletting. Now you've got leeches living in a jar by your bed and a sharp knife you use to release the evil humors. You told a merchant last week that a sapphire under the tongue could cure boils. He's dead now. So you buried the sapphire under your doorstep for luck. The town is getting restless. People want results. They want healing. What they're getting is more death and rats the size of small dogs. Someone accuses you of witchcraft. Another says you've been consorting with demons. You explain about the herbs, the poultices, the balance of the four humors. They don't understand. They just see a man in a bird mask offering vials that smell like pickled despair. Still, you keep brewing. Each day, you adjust the recipe. Less sage, more vinegar. A dash of wormwood. You think the mold growing on your wall might actually be helpful. You scrape it off with your fingernail and add it to the batch. That night, the dreams are sharper, louder. You see a river of blood leading to a tree with golden fruit. The fruit splits open, and inside is a rat. It smiles at you. When you wake, your pillow is soaked, and the rats are watching. Always watching. Then, one morning, it happens. A boy recovers. Not just survives, he improves. His swellings recede. His eyes clear. His breath returns. You gave him the newest version of Vitacordis. Word spreads like fire through dry brush. People are at your door before the bells stop tolling. They bring coins, bread, chickens. A woman offers her daughter's hand in marriage. You smile. You feel powerful. You feel chosen. But by nightfall, the boy is dead. And so are two more who drank your potion. The people turn on you again. You're a charlatan, a killer, a fraud. You try to explain. The mold was different this time. The vinegar was spoiled. The rats must have... Too late. They're dragging you out of your hut. Your robe tears. Your mask falls. You're just a man again. A tired, filthy man with too many dreams and too few answers. They don't kill you. They just leave you outside the town gates with your cauldron and your broken glass and your little jar of mold. You sit by the road as night falls. The rats follow you. And in your heart, you still believe? Tomorrow, maybe, you'll get it right. Maybe the dreams will show you the truth. Maybe the next potion will be the cure. But you don't sleep. You can't. Your mind is full of tinctures and toxins and smells that haven't left your nose for days. Your hands tremble from exhaustion, stained yellow with saffron and something far less noble. Pustule fluid from a man who coughed himself to death mid-experiment. There's no way to be sure if you're on the verge of a breakthrough or a complete mental collapse. But you don't care. Not anymore. You've become a creature of obsession, half-starved, half-mad, and entirely convinced that you are the only one who can save this festering corner of the world. You talk to yourself now, whispering ingredients under your breath like spells. Mandrake, wormwood, crushed emeralds, rat bile. You scribble notes feverishly by candlelight, though most of them are unreadable, written sideways, upside down, sometimes in Latin, sometimes in a slurred shorthand even you barely recognize. The townspeople have stopped knocking. The last patient you treated burst into flames. Not metaphorically. You coated the man in a flammable salve and tried to sweat the sickness out by lighting a nearby fire. The man screamed, you shouted, and everyone else ran. Since then, there's been an unspoken agreement. If you're sick, just die quietly. Don't go to the doctor with the wild eyes and the rat traps dangling from his belt. You're not healing anyone. You're collecting. Yes, collecting rats. You believe they're the key. You're convinced the plague is more than punishment. It's intelligent, coordinated, and the rats, those beady-eyed demons with tails like whips, are its soldiers. Every night you set traps, cages, poisoned bread, dead cats nailed to beams like scarecrows. You walk the alleyways barefoot, chanting to the rats in hopes that one of them will speak. You're certain they know something. You just haven't cracked their code yet. In your hut, formerly a respectable apothecary shop, now a cross between an alchemist's dungeon and a midden pit, you have jars filled with rat parts, ears, tongues, spleens suspended in cloudy fluid. You dissect them by candlelight, muttering, "Where is it? Where is the sickness hiding?" Your hands shake, not from fear, from the plague. You don't know it yet, but the black boils beneath your sleeves tell the truth. You're dying, but you won't admit it. Delirium is a powerful shield. You tell yourself the tremors are excitement. The blood in your cough is just bile. The cold sweats, the burning behind your eyes, the hallucinations of giant rats crawling out of the walls. That's all just side effects of genius. You mix more powders, brew another potion. It tastes like regret and copper and burns going down. Still, you drink it. If you die, so be it. Better to collapse chasing a cure than rot in some anonymous pit beneath a priest's empty chant. Outside, the bells toll again. Another funeral. Or 10. It doesn't matter anymore. Time stretches and warps. Days blur into moans. Nights shrink into flickering candlelight and scratching behind the walls. You stare at your newest concoction, a deep purple sludge in a cracked ceramic bowl, and decide, this is it. This is the one. It has to be. It smells like rotting onions and tastes like soot, but it feels right. You grab a rat from the cage, a big one, fat, twitchy, with fur like a dying rug. You pour the potion down its throat while it writhes and squeals. Then you wait. 15 minutes. Still, Still. Then the rat stirs. You gasp. It's walking, straight, proud, like it's been resurrected with dignity. You laugh, high and shrill, the sound of a man unraveling. "It lives!" you shout, slamming your fist against the table. "It lives! I've done it!" The rat explodes, not figuratively, literally. It swells, quivers, and bursts, splattering your face and the walls with something that defies all classification. You blink, the candle flickers. You laugh again. Louder now. "Progress!" you shriek. Failure is part of progress. By dawn, you're no longer a man. You're a story, a warning, the kind whispered by mothers to scare their children into obedience. "Don't go near the rat doctor," they say. "He'll trap you, boil you, and feed your teeth to the next patient." No one comes near the hut now, not even the rats, which is ironic, because they're winning. The plague spreads faster than fire. Whole streets go silent. Entire families vanish. Doors marked with crude red crosses, or left wide open as if even death forgot to shut them. The church is overflowing. The market is dead. The tavern is drowning. And still, you brew. Your hands are bones now. Your face, a ghost. Your stomach, a pit. But you keep mixing. The plague took your mother, your brother, your soul. But it won't take your purpose. One night, you drink the newest potion. It's green this time. Slippery. It tastes like envy and ash. You smile, then fall. You dream of rats. And this time, they laugh. When they finally force the door weeks later, your hut is empty. The smell is apocalyptic. The walls are clawed. Your notes are madness. The jars are shattered. The cage is open. And the rats are gone. So are you. Some say you cured yourself. Others say you became something else. Not quite human. Not quite rat. A whisper in the dark. A lesson. But no one ever saw you again. Except perhaps in their nightmares, where the rats whisper and you laugh. The town tries to forget you. They burn your notes, dismantle your hut, salt the earth beneath it. The priests chant for 7 days and 7 nights, waving incense over scorched wood, declaring the place cleansed. But nothing grows there now. Not weeds, not moss, not even flies dare to linger. It is a patch of death, and the earth remembers what you did. Thanks for listening. If you're already asleep, great. We've successfully lulled you to sleep. And if you're still awake, well, that's impressive. If you genuinely enjoy these boring stories about history, feel free to subscribe to our channel whenever you're in the mood. Sleep well, and good night.